And I find a lot of people ask for the vessels. People will ask for wedding gifts or showers. Usually gifts.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Now you have one vase here. Do you have other designs of vases?
I do. So I kind of have 5 signature textures. There's this ridges one that's here today. There is spikes. I have these little suction type textures that come in different sizes. There's like a hump one. Most of the inspiration comes from coral and how it appears underwater.
Okay.
So I would say that anything that's underwater, I'm pretty much grabbing the texture from that and trying to figure out how to manipulate that.
Okay.
In my pieces.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. Now, you said you've started ceramics 3 years.
Yeah, 4 years ago.
And it's something that a friend kind of inspired you to join him on his hobby trip.
Yeah.
Now, you've written a book.
Yes.
Can we talk about this book?
Sure.
That's about ceramics.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is. It's actually interesting enough about how I came around to doing ceramics.
Okay.
Like I said, I thought I'd
show it.
There it is.
Yeah.
It's called Mud Love, and the idea behind it is that I stumbled upon a talent that I didn't think I had. My dad's an architect, and I grew up making things with my hands out of wood. My grandmother taught me how to sew. She was a straw vendor. So, I'm very good with my hands, crocheting, the whole nine, sewing, knitting. I can do it all. Wow. But I just did not like making things like that. And so that was my first reaction to taking this class in clay. And prior to that, I'd only done clay in college because it was that class I had to take 3D sculpture or whatever. And then I just fell in love. So the book really talks about my journey and what I went through and what inspired me and why it was so important to move in this particular direction. And it's a combination of journal entries, the earlier pieces, the first set of pieces, my feelings behind them, what I was thinking when I was making them. And I shared it with a friend, and she was like, oh, you should make this into a book. And I was like, but that's my diary. I don't want people to read my diary. And she was like, no, you should definitely make it into a book. And so I did that. I went to school for graphic design, so it was another labor of love. And it just seemed to be the perfect marriage between 2 skill sets. Just did it.
Okay, so now tell me, then this piece looked rather interesting.
Yes. So they're a set of bowls.
Oh, these are bowls.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm very drawn to the teardrop shape. So I'm always looking for ways to manipulate that in my work. There's something very interesting about it that's symmetrical and very organic at the same time. And the idea of these 2 bowls was the meeting of 2 different characters. You have a ridge textured here, and then you have a more subtle texture in the other bowl to the left. And so I just wanted to marry those 2 together and see how they interacted. And that's pretty much what came of that. And I call that piece Couples Breakfast. His and hers.
Oh, his and hers. Interesting. Yeah. So, are they with you, or have someone purchased them already?
So most of the pieces in the book are already privately owned.
Oh, okay.
So there are a few that are left, but the majority of them have owners already.
Okay. This one is very interesting. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Is that piece
that actually, unfortunately, I lost. I still have it. It just got damaged when I was moving to New York. But that's definitely one of my favorites as well. It signifies a time when I was starting to challenge myself. I'm very all about the textures, and a lot of the pieces are texture heavy. And this one, I wanted to challenge myself in the sense of how do we tone down some of the textures and focus more on form.
Okay.
So this originally started as this act of women and birth and this, again, teardrop shape that I like to manipulate in all of my vessels.
Right.
So you'll see that repeated throughout. And just collaring it and putting a nice collar on it. That's why it's called Collared Lady.
Okay.
And then when you look inside these collars, you see texture.
Right.
Little invitation, I guess you would say.
This is a vase.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you.
It does have, it's a totally different dimension.
Yeah.
Other than what you see, made out of glass. And not too many ceramic vases look like this. This is really beautiful.
Thank you.
Can you duplicate that?
I could.
Okay.
Would you like me to duplicate that for you?
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's not a problem.
That's beautiful. Now, this looks like a candle stand. Is it?
It's so, I mean, it's not. It's actually kind of a bottle with a lid. And I think if you turn over the next page, you'll see what it looks like when it's assembled.
Oh.
And again, this piece follows that same teardrop shape that I'm addicted to, and this idea of inviting someone in is what we try to do with the top part of the piece, similar to the one that you saw before,
Right.
And inviting and using the glaze with this dark kind of crimson color to pull you in.
Okay.
Your eye is drawn to all these textures, and then you've got this upward movement that just pulls you in with color. So it's a playful experience, that piece.
Beautiful. Yeah, whoa. And this piece here, this is what?
This is artichoke.
Okay.
And I kind of remember the night I was working on that piece. Again, it's this idea of, challenging myself to do less texture and focus more on form. And there were two ideas going through my head as I created this. It had to do with the heart and how it functioned, and it's all of its valves, and it had to do with coming together.
Okay.
So this piece started, if you can imagine, like this. And I pinched them in, like it was a matter of coming in. All of the other pieces, the last two pieces kind of go out.
Okay.
This one is bringing everything in.
So this is like just a tabletop.
Yeah, I would say like a
decorative
bud
piece?
vase. Yeah, I would say like
a
a bud
bud
vase.
vase.
You could use
Okay.
it
These
as a paperweight.
are
but
very
yeah.
unusual and beautiful. Yeah. Very nice. Very nicely put together.
Thank you.
Yeah. And, okay, you tend to like that pinching
Yes.
of the
Yes.
clay.
So this is one of the textures, right? Like spikes. It's, to me, that's more of an aggressive texture.
Okay.
That's not something you should touch, right?
Okay.
And when I tend to, that one takes the longest. It's the longest texture to produce it. Like if I said that other pieces with the ridges was 2 weeks, this is now, we're talking 4 weeks, depending on the size of the piece. But it's a very aggressive texture. It's meant to be very, even though it's a feminine shape, very masculine and aggressive.
Okay, so you have a collection of vases here.
Yes.
I hope the camera can pick this up. Am I holding the book in the right position?
You want to move it over? Oh, yeah.
Are you capturing it? Yeah. Okay, those are really beautiful.
Yeah, this is a series that I did called Pour and Sip. The idea was playing around with the lids and making the lids little mini forms themselves that rest in larger forms. So on the previous pages, you saw that it was like a lid and it was the bottom part. This actually won second place at the Pennsylvania State Museum annual exhibit. So that was a good thing. That was like a real surprise for me because this was actually like one of the very first pieces and very first shows that I'd gotten into. So
that's
then
very encouraging.
so it was like, oh, maybe we're onto something here.
That's very encouraging.
So that's my keepsake. That's my treasure.
So do you go into a lot of shows? Are there a lot of shows for ceramics, I should say?
There are a lot of shows for pottery, and there are a few shows for ceramics. I'm still trying to find my place, I would say. But, artists make opportunities.
Right.
And we do this, well, I do it because I need an outlet. And the shows will come. The work doesn't disappear anywhere. I mean, you can keep creating work. You'll find time to show it.
Yeah.
So I'm more concerned about the process, and I just let it flow.
Yeah, it's a pity you didn't put more. I know you only have 2 pieces in the exhibition that's currently on.
I know, which is so interesting because I went from having so much work to now like just waiting for another big batch. So I tend to, my cycle's more like, as a painter, I would paint and it'd be painting after painting after painting, and I would just have paintings, so you could just keep going.
Right.
The fact that my pieces take so long for me to turn them around means that I really go through this like gathering period where I have a lot of work that needs to get in the kiln, and then when a kiln comes out, I've got a lot of work again, and then it's like this repeated cycle. But to get to a kiln takes me a couple months, right? So it's this cycle.
Okay, it's beautiful. That's my cameraman. He's laughing at, but these are really beautiful.
Thank you.
What about a conch shell? Have you ever tried doing a conch shell?
I know everybody asks that. Something about I think this glaze that is reminiscent of conch for folks. But, no, I've never tried to manipulate a conch shell.
Oh, really?
I mean, they're beautiful, and I love conch. But no, I've never actually tried to manipulate a conch shell.
Okay.
But it is truly inspirational.
Yeah. These are like designer pieces. They're really beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm really intrigued. I'm thinking.
Oh, see, that piece is here.
Yeah, that piece is. Yeah. That's beautiful. I'm really, really impressed.
Oh, thank you.
I'm kind of, I'm happy that you didn't bring all of these into the show.
I wish I could have. They're not all here. I mean, like, literally, I go over to my studio, I'm like, okay, what am I going to grab? Because we have a lot of stuff that needs to be fired.
Oh, okay. So you have a lot of things that needs to be fired.
Oh, yes. Sometime in January, we will have a whole lot of stuff again.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. So when you say you have a lot of stuff again, so do you sell them?
Yes, and then I'll be on a mission to get them in shows, photograph them, and exhibit them. But it's hard because pieces can die, I would say, in a kiln firing. I could lose pieces. So it's hard to commit to something that you might not be able to deliver.
Right.
I act on the cautionary safe side, where I get my pieces done before I start showing them, because if they break before you show them, and I've actually had someone proposition me to purchase a piece that hadn't been fired yet, and I was like so nervous because I was like, if this piece is destroyed, you can't get it. Well, at least I'm not going to give it to you.
Right.
Broken or chipped or anything that could possibly happen.
Right.
And he was like, no, I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. And that piece actually didn't make it through glazing. And it was like, got to make you a new one. It didn't make it.
What happens when that happens? What takes place when that happens, when you lose it in firing?
A number of things can happen. It can crack in the first firing session. It can crack.
Is it too much fire, too much heat, or what?
It has to do with the moisture of the clay and how it dried, and how it was built. I had a whole series once of like 6 pieces that there was a hairline crack in the bottom of every last one.
Wow.
Every last one. And I was like, what? So, I mean, there's so many things that can happen when you're molding the clay together, the seams or where you mold them together. I'm adhering pieces to them. Just the rate at which it dries. I mean, it's just so many different factors that could go into it.
Right.
I could cool it too fast and it could crack. So there's so many things that could go in that I don't have control over necessarily that could go wrong. And then the second firing with the glazing, I can't predict how that glaze is going to come out. These are 2 glazes that I mix together that I kind of have a sense of how they interact with each other. But I'm still always surprised at times in their behavior.
Okay. How many different types of glazes? Ceramics are there? Different types. When you say texture-wise, or when you say two types blend together.
Oh, the two type of glazes. Oh, there are thousands of glazes.
Oh, okay.
There are thousands.
Okay. So you have to know which two blend together when you're making certain things?
Well, you should kind of know how they blend together if you plan on blending, right?
Okay.
So glaze is essentially like glass particles that they melt down and they adhere to the ceramic work. You definitely should know what you're mixing together if you plan on mixing any of them. I tested about, 100-something tiles before I came to like the conclusion that I like these two glazes. And then there's different firing levels. I fired at cone 6, can go up to cone 10, from 1. So it's like there are a lot of different elements that play into what type of glaze you use. And for my cone firing level, I chose these two glazes, and they work together well. And you'd be surprised. I am now working with a darker clay. This is a white clay.
Okay.
I'm working with a darker clay as well, and I tested the same glazes on a dark clay, and they look completely different. Okay. This is a white and like a raspberry, and I put the same white and raspberry on a dark clay, and it's got a blue tint to it. It's blue.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, hold on, that's not how you were glazing for the last couple of years. All I did was change the clay. So that just shows like how you just don't know to the detail what's going to happen in that last firing. That last firing, when you put that glaze in there, is so important, and it could totally change how you thought your piece was going to come out.
Right.
I'm always surprised. I'm like, I did not know I put that much raspberry there for that to be so strong in that one part of the piece. Like, oh wow, I must have had more white here or a thicker layer here. So it's more white in this area versus, so it's, you just don't know. And that's the part where I'm like, I enjoy that, but it's also the part where I can't tell somebody outright, like, this is what it's going to look like.
Right. So that's that brings the color when you use a thicker clay. Okay.
Yeah. So, the areas where it's much more concentrated in color was a thicker layer of clay.
Right. Okay.
Or where it pooled, because the clay, it melts. So it will melt on the piece as it's being fired, and that's how it adheres. It runs downward, so you can see it. You can see it if you look closely at the clay. It's running in some of the areas, and that's only because I mixed the two clays. If I didn't, you wouldn't be able to see it. It would
now,
just
you
be one
mentioned
color.
that your friend, kind of drew you into this. What type of work he or she is doing?
Pottery. So I don't do much functional work. I do more sculptural pieces.
Okay.
The class that he actually took me to was a husband and wife team, and they were actual potters. So they were all about making teacups and I don't know, they're excellent at it. Teacups and beautiful teapots and, dishware. And I walked into the class like, I am not doing dishware. I am an artist, and I don't want to make teapots. I'm sorry. I don't want to make a cup or a mug. So I came in pretty much ready to be like, this is going to be sculptural for me. That's what I'm drawn to. And they were very open to that. So that's what we did.